Well, hey there, fellow traveler. What you up to? You just reading a book? About what? About the moon? Boy, do I ever have a story for you. I'm ready to tell my students about the space race. Are you interested in hearing more about the space race? Creature says yes. Let's go. Hey, my students, Mr. Swanson here. If you're watching this video, it means I'm not in class today, or maybe you're not in class today. But we have some notes to do about the space race, and this is what it looks like inside of your toolbox. So let's go ahead and ready, set, let's go. Hey, space traveler, I got a question for you. My question for you is, how do you win a game? How do you win a game? What's the whole point of a game?
Well,
You got like in a basketball game, who wins a basketball game? The team that has the most points is exactly right. Okay. Well, if it was called the space game, I'm not sure America would win the winner. But I got another question for you. How do you win a race?
fast.
You got to be the
Practice.
first person to the finish line, right? Okay. Well, check this out. If this is the scoreboard, students, you can follow along on the PDF that you have attached to the Google Classroom page. If this is a scoreboard, golly, who's it look like has the most points on the scoreboard?
I don't know.
The red team, the red flag. So if it was called the space game, the Soviet Union clearly has more points on the scoreboard. Look at that. First artificial satellite, first animal in space, first photographs, first person in space, first woman in space, first space walk. The Soviet Union clearly has more points on the scoreboard. Even look at this. I'll advance it even one more. First spacecraft landing on the moon. But you know what we call it? We don't call it the space game. We call it the space race. And the reason we, the United States, call it the space race, we moved the goal line, if you will. We said, we don't care about all those other firsts that y'all got, Soviet Union. The race is to put a man on the moon. And you can't see there, we do have the first person on the moon. Therefore, we declare ourselves the winners of the space race. Yeah, not a game, but a race. So on your notes there, kind of got a core definition of what is the space race for you. It is a symbolic competition between the Cold War powers resulting in science and technology advances for all of humankind. That sounds good, right? Science and technology advances. This is a positive aspect of the Cold War. Nuclear arms race, not so good. Space race, who does the space race benefit? Say all of us.
All of us.
All of us. So even though there was a lot of politics involved, and yeah, both sides wanted to win, it's still a positive thing for all of humanity. I got this video pulled up on the screen right here, and I'm going to link it inside your Google Classroom. So I recommend at this time you pause my video and watch this video about the space race, so you kind of have an understanding of the rest of what we're going to talk about here today. So pause.
Hold up.
And we're back. Okay.
Wait.
Hey, thanks for watching that video right there. What you got to say, fellow traveler?
All right, don't pause whenever he said pause. I want you to do something. Blast off to the next video.
That's good. We got a YouTuber in the making right here. All right, next up, after you've come back to Earth, next up your notes here is going to be Sputnik 1. As you see on the screen, Sputnik 1 is the first artificial satellite to orbit the Earth. It is not an American satellite. Yeah, this is one of those points on the scoreboard for the Soviets. Sputnik 1 is the picture you see on the screen right there. It's just a metal sphere with some stabilizing fins. Nothing more than a 120-pound ball of metal. But you know who didn't know that? Everybody in America. In October 4th, 1957, it was launched into an elliptical low Earth orbit. That's a very low orbit. In fact, today, even space travelers like Jeff Bezos from Amazon, he went into low Earth orbit. So this isn't to the outer regions of outer space. This is a very low atmospheric orbit. But it was the Soviets doing it first. And that put points on the scoreboard for them. And if you're an American, you woke up to headlines that looked like this. Sayla, can you read that to us? Russian
satellite circling Earth.
Sayla, do this now. Ah! If If you're an American who wakes up to this newspaper and you see that the Russians put a satellite into orbit, what do you assume it's carrying? It's a bomb.
A bomb.
You assume, okay, you're at the height of nuclear proliferation, okay, the weapons race, the atomic weapons race, and you assume that is carrying a nuclear bomb, and you assume that it's pointed at you. And wherever you are, California, New York, Kansas, Nebraska, Georgia, Alabama, you're like, they're coming for me. They're coming for me. So an enduring result of Sputnik is that it really increased fear throughout the United States. That's going to be one of our big takeaways. Sputnik increases fear throughout the United States. And it also makes us realize we got to get going. Like, if we're going to be in this game race at all, we got to get going. Next picture you see there, this actually is, this is a sketch of Sputnik. So like I said, it's nothing more than a ball with some stabilizing spins. But hey, it sets the stage for what could they do next. Like, if they can put a ball into space, who's to say that the next one won't be carrying a bomb? So that's one of our, well, I'll bring it here. What are the influences of Sputnik? One of your key vocabs for this class period. The influences of Sputnik in the United States, but also as it pertains to the space race, are an increase in funding in science and math education. Literally, Sayla, your math class today is the result of Sputnik 1. America realized we're behind, and not just behind with the adults, the scientists who build rockets. We're behind in school. We're behind with our kindergartners. We look around and we see other countries with their youth more educated and more advanced than ours. So we got to fix that. So in 1957, we have a national gut check where we say, hey, we need to start training math and sciences at younger grades. So I kid you not, if you hate your math class today, you can thank the Russians in Sputnik 1, because your math and science curriculum today is related to Sputnik 1. We also create a national space program, which is NASA. I think we're all very familiar with the NASA logo. Sayla, are you familiar with the NASA logo? I'm not sure it's on this shirt, but you see that blue logo right there, NASA? We're all pretty familiar with the NASA logo, not the one she's showing you on the screen right there. But this is our national, it stands for National Aeronautical and Space Administration. And it is, so we want to help the youth get smart. We also, this is how the adults start doing better in the space race. We have a National Space Administration. Finally, Sputnik inspires the development of new technologies. And then on a more negative side, that last bullet point there, it increases the fear of a missile strike against the United States. So a couple positives, we get better at math and science, and then a big negative, the negative being the increased fear throughout the country. This is the logo I'm talking about, Salem. You recognize that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you recognize that. Now, Salem, I want you to do something for me. You can do it at this desk right here. I want you to duck and cover underneath the desk, just like a tornado is coming. Okay, get underneath the desk like a tornado is coming. All right, what Sayla is demonstrating, just like the picture you see on the screen there, it's called the duck and cover drill, which is something that was very common for school children in the 50s and 60s to practice. But they weren't ducking and covering from a tornado. They were ducking and covering because their city has been identified as an attack point for a nuclear strike. So the old duck and cover drill is like, hey, the alarms go off, be-doo, be-doo, be-doo. Well, children, it's time to duck and cover. And I say duck, cover, and kiss it goodbye, because there ain't no way that this tabletop is going to save your life from a nuclear strike. But I'm being a little silly there. What this shows is that Americans were fighting back. We were willing to do something, and school children really did these duck and cover drills. For the time period, maybe your grandparents or great-grandparents remember this. So maybe I'll encourage you to ask your grandparents, great-grandparents, if they're still around, if they remember this time period. Sayla, do you know a good movie that kind of reflects the history that we've been talking about here?
Yes.
Look at this screen right here. Can you read to me the title of that movie?
Hidden Figures.
Hidden Figures. Are you familiar with that movie?
No.
You know, I'm not sure. You and I have not watched this movie. You want to watch this movie this weekend? I think we should. So it's the story of, and actually the movie shows 3, but it's actually 4 African-American women who are very responsible for the coding that helped America get to the moon. So they're called hidden figures because this is at the height of segregation and civil rights injustices in America, not quite into the era of integration, Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights movement. So they're called hidden because they didn't get the credit they deserved. 1, for their ethnicity, and 2, for their gender. Okay, African-American women were not getting the credit they deserved. But today, we recognize those hidden figures a lot better, and present history is uncovering the role of many hidden figures, especially those in this title story. So just a couple more here and we'll be done with our video for today. Next up, actually on your notes, is the moon landing. And don't quite write this, don't write this statement down. Okay, I'm going to give you another statement to write down here in just a second. Just read it for you, setting it up, the moon landing. Americans were fascinated by the ingenuity of the space program, in particular NASA. And the goal then becomes, all right, the Russians have gotten a bunch of firsts. So our goal is going to become to be the man, to put a man on the moon. And President Kennedy very poignantly says by the end of the decade. I'll read the whole quote to you. This is the man, the myth, the legend, John F. Kennedy. He says, I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before the decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth. He says this in the year 1963. So before the decade is out would be before 1970. And we do exactly that. Almost let the decade run out. But in July of 1969, we will land a man on the moon. And here is that core definition. Go ahead and write there what's in color. The Apollo 11 lunar module carrying Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon. Go ahead, Sailor, finish it for us.
July 20th, 1969, and us won the space race.
And us, the U.S., won the space race. So there's a couple of vocabs inside that. I want you to understand Apollo 11 is the name of the mission. Neil Armstrong is the name of the first man to walk on the moon, and Buzz Aldrin is the name of the second man to walk on the moon. Hang on, sis. I'll deal with this. Thank you. I appreciate your initiative. But more than just landing on the moon, okay, it'd be one thing if I told you I landed on the moon, right? What's better than telling you that I did something?
Proof.
Proof is exactly right. I'm going to show you, and we show it to the world on television. So this is a significant technology of the day. Television is how we show that we landed on the moon. So the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union was symbolically complete with the planting of the American flag in space. Taylor, go ahead and look at these gentlemen right here. These are the two of the first three. Two of them walked on the moon. This is the crew of Apollo 11. So on the left-hand side of your screen, you see Neil Armstrong. He is the very first man to walk on the moon. On the right-hand side of your screen, you see Buzz Aldrin. He is the second man to walk on the moon. And I like to point out this story real quickly here. The guy you see in the middle, his name is Michael Collins. Michael Collins did not walk on the moon. I call him history's greatest teammate because his job was to keep the orbiter in orbit while the other two were playing around on the moon. And realistically, the mission could not have happened if it wasn't for Michael Collins keeping that orbiter in the atmosphere while the other two were on the surface of the moon, because they wouldn't have had a way to get home otherwise. So Michael Collins sacrificed the opportunity to walk on the moon in order that all three of them could get home. And I just imagine, like perhaps he had the chance to tell his grandchildren, like, I walked on the moon. But he actually wouldn't have had the chance to tell his grandchildren that because he never would have gotten home if he hadn't been in the orbiter. So two of the men walked on the moon, and then Michael Collins is really the one that holds it all together by letting them get home because he was the pilot of the return capsule. So Michael Collins, history's greatest teammate. So look at this picture here. Who do you see in the picture? That's me. So this picture here, I had opportunity to visit an Air and Space Museum in Oklahoma City. And at this particular museum, they have a life-size replica of the lunar module that actually landed on the moon. And you see the astronauts coming down the ladder. I mean, this is a life-size replica of what it would have looked like. And I want to give you two thoughts here. Thought number one, as I stood there at the museum, I thought, wow, this is really big. And it was cavernous. It was probably the size of this room here. I mean, it felt like a big model. But at the same time, I also had the thought, wow, this is really small, because this thing took humans to the moon and landed on the moon. I mean, part of that looks like tinfoil. Like, what did they have as protection from the outside elements? Darn near just looks like tinfoil. So it really is amazing that this machine was able to take humans to Earth and return them safely, accomplishing President Kennedy's goal. Now, President Kennedy, unfortunately, was not alive to see it happen. We know he was assassinated in November of 1963, but he gets a lot of credit for it. History gives him credit for setting the goal. And even a couple presidents later, when we accomplished the goal, Kennedy gets a lot of credit for setting that goal and ultimately the country accomplishing that goal. Tell you a little bit more about my guy, Buzz. Sailor, you're going to like this. I got a question for you. Do you wonder where Buzz Aldrin went to college? Do you wonder?
Disney.
He did not go to college at Disney. He's a West Point graduate. So I've told you a lot about West Pointers in U.S. and world history. Buzz Aldrin is a West Point graduate, class of 1951. He is an Army Air Corps veteran. A lot of these early guys were pilots in the military before they were selected for the astronaut program. He's one of those. And he is the second man to walk on the moon. Ask me where Neil Armstrong went to college.
Disney.
Purdue. Ask me where Michael Collins went to college.
Disney.
Also, West Point. So I just really want to point out that nobody from Navy was in Apollo 11. So big Navy, right? Isn't that our favorite thing to say? This is a picture of Buzz Aldrin. And Sayla, I feel like you're set up for success here. If the guy's name is Buzz,
Buzz Lightyear.
who do you think he inspires as a character later in life? Say it to the camera.
Buzz Lightyear.
Is correct. Buzz Aldrin is the namesake for Disney's Buzz Lightyear. And in fact, Sayla, look at this picture. This is him with a Buzz Lightyear figurine at, where's he at, Sayla? Disney. So just a little bit more about the guy. He's very charismatic. Okay, he's a funny guy. He's very active on social media. And in fact, I'll tell you a little bit more about his future, about his current plans. If he, yep, there you go, show it off, Sayla. All right, step aside so we can finish him. If he was an explorer to the moon, where do you think he wants the next generation of explorers to go? Do you have any guesses?
The moon.
Well, he went to the moon, so he says, hey, I'm too old to do this, but I want the next generation of explorers to go to Mars. So you see his shirt there says Destination Mars. He is active on Instagram, Facebook, like he posts regularly. Pretty funny dude, actually. So I encourage you maybe check out Buzz Aldrin on all the social media platforms. A little bit of recruiting here. This is a West Point poster, and it says, at West Point, much of the history we teach is made by the people we taught. And many astronauts have come through West Point. I am not one of them. Maybe someday they'll make a poster about high school history teachers because I would only fit into that category. I'll round it out here with this picture. This is a picture of all the moon landings. In total, we will land on the moon 6 times. Apollo 11, 12. Apollo 13, unfortunately, does not land on the moon. It's an incredible story, but it doesn't land on the moon. Apollo 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17. And those are, I said it right. And these are the various locations that they landed on the moon. Much like if you were going to visit Earth, okay, you wouldn't want to visit Florida over and over and over. You want to visit the various different locations of Earth. Well, we see the various landing spots there that the moon landings occurred. So we have samples from all these different locations. Got to know about the different corners of the moon, different portions of the moon. So a good little infographic there that kind of illustrates where humanity has explored the moon. In total, 12 humans have walked on the moon, 2 from each of these missions. So that is a total of 12. I'm going to hyperlink this video here. Sayla, what's the title of this video? July 20th, 1969, did the U.S. go to the moon to beat the Soviets? So go ahead and click on this video and watch this as well. Final little bit here. Oh yeah, pause.
All right, we're back.
And we're back. Final little bit here. I'm gonna post a PDF, and in your notes, you are gonna have to turn a few pages. I apologize, they are not in order, but there is this timeline of the space race. I want you to read the various articles and then put in order the events. And y'all, this is what makes world history. World history, U.S. history, we got to hammer some vocab and move on. World history, you guys get to really see the timeline of the space race by reading these articles. They're very interesting, and in a lot of ways, the advancements of the space race affects the life that you have today. Actually, after you've done this, let's say pause again. Pause. After you've done this, return to me here, and I want to tell you about the legacy of the space race. Just a couple of pieces of technology that are in our world today because of the space race. One, satellite telecommunications. Yo, if you got a phone in your back pocket right now, or it shouldn't be in your pocket, it should be in the cell jail. But if you own a cell phone, you can say thank you to the space race because we have satellites that help us communicate all across the globe today. So thank you, space race.
You guys might be wondering, why is there a fire truck and a ski man?
You might be wondering that, Sayla. Why is there a fire truck and a skier?
I don't know.
Would you like for me to tell you?
Yeah.
That's a great idea. GPS. GPS is a product of the space race. Global photography. If you've ever looked at something on Google Earth, Well, that's possible because we have cameras in the sky, thanks to the space race. Weather forecasting. Sayla, do you like to know when a hurricane is coming our way?
Yes.
I do, so that we can leave. Well, we kind of understand weather patterns and models and weather forecasting because of the technology of the space race. A bunch of disease research has happened in the higher upper atmospheres, and we benefit from that as well. Sayla, this is why there's a fire truck on the screen. A lot of firefighting technology is a product of the space race. Flame retardant materials, like, do you want to catch on fire in a spacecraft?
Oh, no.
No, you do not. So a lot of spacesuit materials is actually very similar to what firefighters use today. Flame slowing materials, flame retardant materials. Similarly for cold weather gear. So do you have a snow jacket?
Yes.
Do you have gloves?
Yes.
Do you have goggles that are kind of good for the snow? Yes, you do. Those are all pieces of technology that come to us thanks to the space race as well. I'll close out like this, and then you'll have the rest of the hour to do what you need to do. Apollo was the program that took us to the moon. A lot of times students ask, well, are we ever going back? The answer is yes. Right now, NASA is seeking to return to the moon with the Artemis program. Here's a little double for you, especially for your literature folks. Apollo and Artemis were twins in Greek mythology. Apollo was a boy and Artemis was a girl, his sister. So Apollo took us to the moon, one of the twins, and Artemis, twin sister, is going to take us back to the moon. This is actually, Artemis 1 has already been to the backside of the moon. No people, but it did a slingshot around the moon, proved the concept that the Artemis rockets can't go to the moon. This is the crew of Artemis 2. This is supposed to take a crew to the moon later next year, fall of 2025. And then the crew has not yet been named, but Artemis 3 is supposed to take humankind, back to the moon in approximately September of 2026. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some delays. I wouldn't be surprised if it takes into 2027. But Artemis 3 is supposed to take humankind back to the moon. Looking at the crew here, and I think we see a different picture than we noticed from the Apollo 11 crew. I see a woman. I see an African-American man. And then as I really look at the details, I see a Canadian flag. So this is not just an American crew. This is a multinational, male and female, multi-ethnicity crew. Really a blending of humankind. I think that's pretty cool. Artemis 3 is designed to take a woman to the moon as well. So we should be seeing a woman walk on the moon in approximately late 26 or early 2027. So as you are someone who pays attention to the news, notice that. And I hope that we'll all be watching that history together in the near future. So team, with that, that is a quick audio guide on the space race. And I apologize that I'm not in class with you here today, but I know you do a great job continuing forward even when I'm not present. Sayla, you want to come say goodbye?
No.
Come say goodbye. She has already blasted off. This is it. If you want to say goodbye, come and do it. Come and do it. Okay, what? Say see you later.
Hey, look! It's on!
Oh! Fist bump, noggin. See ya.
Oh, brother, dude.
That was